and that same year, John came, and there was nobody else shooting in the water, so I just jumped in, having one of the very first waves he went by, and one of the first times I'd ever seen him do it, and just standing tall in a barrel. And it wasn't very big at that point; it must have been maybe 4 or 5 feet.
Yep.
But a proper wave, and to see him standing like that, when I saw that, I was like, "Oh, I want more of that."
Dom Mosqueira, welcome to the Salt Sessions, man. Thank you so much for making the time during a busy season to be able to do this.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome, man. Hey, so I guess just get it started. I imagine I've put it out there a bit to people for requests to who to get on the podcast, and your name comes up a lot. So I imagine a lot of people are going to be super stoked with this. But they're probably for sure, man. I reckon heaps of people are going to be stoked. So, but a lot of people have probably just seen your imagery. But maybe just to get started, can you give people just a bit of a background of like where it all began for you? So I guess where you grew up, and ultimately, I guess how you got a camera in your hand to start shooting.
Okay, well, it all started, I guess, from a fairly young age, because I was born and raised in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
I was born in Mexico City. My father has always been an image maker. He had his own little production company. Shouldn't say little, really, but and he did a lot of photography. So I always had it kind of in my peripheral vision and directly in front of me when I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big influence. And then I suppose just the curiosity got the better of me. And then my father gave me my first camera when I was early teenage years. So I started playing with that. And then I just never put it down.
Yep. Yeah.
Distinctly for surfing, or
just in general. So I read that you studied in Canada or something. Did you for
I
a bit?
did, yeah. Well, I grew up in Mexico City and then moved to Puerto Escondido, which is obviously a famous surf spot. But we then moved to Canada. My mother drove us all the way to Canada to see how far we were going.
Yep.
And that's, I did all my uni and all that sort of, all those studies in Montreal in Canada. And that's where I did uni for art history and photography.
So you studied photography there?
I did.
Yeah. Cool. Was that film stuff or digital?
It started mostly film, but at the very end, we went digital. So
yeah.
I got the best of both at that point.
Yeah, for sure. And then and then how did you end up in Tahiti?
Well, just through the happenstance of working as a photographer, I ended up one of my early gigs was working in the British Virgin Islands.
Mm-hmm.
I moved over there to do sailing photography, following boats around during regattas, taking all that sort of sailing imagery. And luckily enough, through living there, I happened to bump into Richard Branson, who then allowed me to do a whole bunch of imagery for Necker Island and celebrity weddings. NDAs won't let me say who.
I love that. I was lucky enough to bump into Richard Branson.
Yeah, well, I mean, he lives on the neighboring island, so it wasn't really that
amazing. Yeah.
And from there, I met someone who was going to be sailing. We were supposed to sail. He wanted to sail around the world and do a surfing and sailing documentary with just the 4 people that were on board.
Yeah.
So I hopped on board, met them out here, and then just by luck and happenstance, we didn't end up seeing eye to eye on a lot of things. And so I got lucky enough that I met my now wife, and she was like, "Why don't you just stay?" And here I am today. And I figured if I was going to marry my photography and surfing, which I always wanted to do, I'd learn in the shallow end of the pool over at Chopa. So
amazing. So you were a surfer before then?
I was. Yeah. Well, I just growing up in Puerto, that's just it was there. Obviously fell in love with it. And then even when I was in Canada during the early days, I'd be one of the weirdos that'd be like, "Who wants to go surfing with me? Let's go." And people would be like, "Surfing? What are you talking about? It's freezing." And I'd be like, "No, we can drop to New York, we can go to Nova Scotia, or we can So I managed to get Motley Crue bandits who would come with me.
Awesome.
And then drive them around. And it's super fun.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I had a guy on last week named Marcus Palladino who lives on Vancouver Island.
Island.
So we're talking about that, about the cold water.
I've never met him in person, but he seems like a legend.
Great guy. Yeah. So you weren't when you're in Porto, you weren't shooting surfing yet, or?
No, I was surfing a lot and just being a rambunctious teen and early 20s, being that guy.
Yeah,
but my family has owned a bar there for 30 years, so I was
okay,
surfing and just doing all that kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah,
or that kind of a life rather than the photo professionalism at that point. So
Definitely. Yeah. So when you got to Teahupoo, so I guess you just kind of stayed there from then on, did you? Like that was, you started shooting surfing, and then that was kind of became your new life?
yeah, well, I
Yeah.
figured again, if I was going to make a career here, that's really what I wanted to do. So I just started putting in all the hours that I could. Any swell, small to big, I'd be swimming around.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, I only had two lenses. I had a zoom and a 20 millimeter.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
I was really close up or with a wide angle. And for the most part, because the only one that I had a port for in the housing was 20 millimeter. Swimming around. And then obviously that evolved to getting a fisheye and just wanting to do a lot of that type of photography, because it just, for me, being in the water, just it allows you to participate in creating an image and just capturing it.
For sure. So
I started doing that, and there's multiple hours in the water.
Yeah. Can you take us through that journey? Because that's a big part of like what I kind of like to talk about in this podcast, is because a lot of people see the Instagram, they see like the final images, but there's not a lot about maybe that they know about the story to get there. And there's a bit of a thing in this day and age of like, you know, maybe people thinking that you can kind of get there like with a shortcut and get instantly famous. So can you kind of, I guess, talk us through that? Like you land in Teahupoo and you're like, fall in love with surf photography. This is what I want to do. That's very much a starting point. But between then and where you are now, there had to be, like you said, a lot of hours in the water, a lot of reaching out to people, getting yourself known. So how did that work for you?
Well, I'll try and take you through it step by step, or my process anyway. It was just that I was so determined to want to make it happen. One, professionally, just because I'd come to a new country and had applied for the paperwork, and it was one of the only jobs that I could do because I wasn't taking somebody else's. I was starting my own business. Sort of.
Yep.
And so for me, it was just, okay, well, I'm going to put my head down and go nonstop. And the best access that I had to that was just swimming out. And I'd swim out to Chops, shoot all day, swim back in, because I didn't really know anyone at the time. And it wasn't like today where kind of there's a lot of taxi boats, and there was taxi boats, but not as many as there are today. And you kind of needed to know people. And very luckily, just through being there constantly, I got to know the locals. And the locals are some of the loveliest people there are. And I started working with them, obviously, to just try and get athletes, people, and they're already so talented to begin with, the locals, that for me, it was just an easy in. So I started shooting my friend Tahiti Henry, who's an amazing local from here, and he was bodyboarding, going full send on shallow outside ledge to big outside ledge. And then Tikanui Smith, Mate Hickley, and then on the line to Matahi Drole and all these people. And so that helped me a lot, just to be able to get the comfort in the water, to know where to sit, where I'm, ideally getting good imagery without being in the way. Because at the beginning, it's learn, the line, and what the wave's doing to do all that stuff. And so they took me in, which was really the most wonderful part of it all, because I ended up living with Tahuri whenever there was swell, and that opened so many doors for me, because then they're like, okay, well, he's with the locals, and and then as the skill developed in the water, I started getting much and much better, to the point where I got lucky enough that obviously all the pros come to Chopo, and just I wouldn't say by happenstance, but just, I guess, personality wise and whatever, started to click with a few of them. And they would start soliciting me every time they'd ask me to shoot, whenever they would come over. And I got very lucky that it wasn't just anybody. Like, it was Jamie O'Brien. John came over. Every time that he would come over, he'd keep asking me to shoot. That to me was always, really?
Made it.
And so, it was just a nice evolution of things that just, and that motivated me to get even better and better, and to put myself in better positions to make better imagery. And then it kind of went from there. But I can condense that. That was like a span of maybe 3 years of nonstop before I even got to the level where I could, start working with these pros and doing these things properly.
So how does that work from a, I mean, maybe it's probably changed over time, I guess, but how does that work from a income point of view? Are you shooting stuff at that time and just hoping to sell images later? Are surfers like paying you to say, hey, I'm coming over, I want you to shoot me for a week while I'm here? Like, how does that actually unfold?
Yeah, well, at the start, there obviously wasn't this Instagram thing. And even before you get known, for me, it was just a question of, shooting all day and then trying to sell the images, just creating an image bank. And then trying to create those contacts, because I didn't, obviously at first it's really hard. Like, okay, well, what are the mag contacts and who is the editor that I need to send them to? Do I send it to the actual editor, the photo editor, or to everyone?
Yeah.
Learning that process wasn't easy. And at that time, it was kind of a very closed little community to a certain extent.
For sure. Yeah.
You know, and especially between photographers, no one wanted to give up their secrets or their contacts. And, you know, you don't want to be the annoying newbie being like, hey, can you let me know who I should send this to?
Yeah, totally.
But, I mean, you do as best you can. And,
course,
you know, people who are very nice and accepting to do so. Yeah. And so little by little, I started getting the contacts of, you know, Surfing Magazine, who I worked with for a very long time. I mean, I wasn't a staff member or anything, but, you know, they just built into a really good relationship. And then obviously the surfers would give me the contacts to their sponsors and the brands, so that I could then, you know, anytime I got imagery of anyone of that brand, I knew who to contact to sell them. But at the beginning, it was really tough because the surfers weren't necessarily going to pay you to shoot their imagery, whereby nowadays they do, because they need it just for their content. So it was just a really hopeful, try and get really good imagery so they can hopefully not say no to it. And so,
for sure.
And that was the avenue. And obviously, especially back then, which is very sad these days that we don't have it much anymore. It's always hard to get a cover, and then
So how early on were you in the Teahupoo thing, as far as it being the, like, you know, phenomenon that it is now, as far as like publicity and stuff? Like, were you shooting it when it was less exposed to the world?
I would say it was fairly exposed if you knew surfing. It's gotten a lot more exposed these days, obviously, just because it's become such a the wave itself is such a phenomenon. I won't say that I was one at the start at all, because there was a lot of people shooting it already, you know, the sport, Tim McKenna, Grambo, all these wonderful people were already shooting it. And so I'd like to say I'm somewhere in the middle, probably, and someone who over the last 15 years has definitely helped.
100%.
More on the map.
Definitely. So do you remember, like, when you first got there and you started shooting these guys, I guess you'd been taking photos before, but this was your sort of foray into, I guess, surf photography. Was there any moments, sessions, photographs that you remember, like, from those early days when you kind of, like, clicked with you and you were like, this is it, or I actually can do this as well? Like, you know?
One of the first ones is that I was at Teahupoo and there wasn't many people around. There used to be swells where there'd be locals and then one or two pros, and it wasn't that crowded. But I remember that Sebastian Zietz was here, and he must have been really fairly young at the time. And for me, it was just like, I really want to get this fisheye thing sorted, and I want to, you know, sip as deep as I can, and, you know, get those. Like, whatever, chopo. And it was just a session where, just for some reason that day, it just clicked. I don't know if it was the swell or what have you, and I ended up getting a few really, to me at the time, were amazing shots of Sebastian, and then from there it gave me the confidence to keep going. And that same year, John came, and really early days, must have been 2009, I think. And there was nobody else shooting in the water, so I just jumped in. Happened one of the very first waves, he went by, and he's one of the first times I'd ever seen him do it, and just standing tall in a barrel. And it wasn't very big at that point. It must have been maybe 4 or 5 feet. But a proper wave, and to see him standing like that, when I saw that, I was like, oh, I want more of that. To propagate that. Anyway,
for sure.
Obviously, there was a lot of trial and error. Again, I'm going to reiterate the fact that back then people were really cagey as to what they would tell you as to what would work. Like, these days, you can just look on YouTube or go on, you know, all these blogs or any things that tell you, you know, A to Z how to shoot surf photography, which I think is great. So I think we should be sharing that information, because, I mean, it's valuable for the next generation or for whoever wants to do it.
Definitely.
Respect.
100%.
But trial and error. They wouldn't tell you, you know, shoot your flat ports dry. So there was a lot of very fuzzy imagery. Figure that one out. And just little things like that, and how to set the focal length in your fisheye so that it, you know, or tape it down and do all this, like, you know, things that nowadays seem super simple, but For me, it wasn't, because even out here, you didn't get that many people coming consistently. So it was a lot of learning on your own, and figuring it out. But
yeah, for sure.
I'm grateful for that, because it was a fun process to do as well.
Definitely. And I think fundamentally it has to make you a better photographer when you're the person that's doing that trial and error and learning it, because they're just doing so many reps rather than literally just getting all of the free pointers and like going out. Like if you've done that trial and error, there's probably so many other intricate things that maybe you can't even articulate, that are things that make you a better photographer now because of all that time you spent learning those things. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of the frustration makes you learn even faster. Right? Yeah. Because you don't make those mistakes again. And how do I figure this out so that it's not happening the next time in the water? And why was that happening? That process obviously does make you a photographer, because you learn to avoid those pitfalls. Yeah,
for sure. So with because you are one of the guys that shoots close, like you'll swim in close and be there like at the front. So was that something that you always, like from the get-go, you were like, this is the spot I want to be in? Did you ever shoot from a boat like beforehand and then go, now I'll swim? Like,
no, for me it was just I grew up in Puerto and seeing surf imagery of Scott Aikner, and that to me was just like, if I ever do surf photography, that's what I want to do.
That's it. Yeah, cool.
That was it for me. That was the wow factor. I was like, oh,
yeah,
I just gnarly, and that's what I want to do.
Yep.
So for me, it was that kind of a passion of, I really want to be up there close and personal, and share that with whoever wants to see Teahupoo that way, and hopefully to people who even don't, to share, because it's such a wowing thing, and not necessarily my photography, but just those angles, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You want to keep looking. So it's just, that for me was the interest in it. And again,
definitely.
I want to participate with the rider.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're amongst it.
And even if I do have a 50 miller summing from the corner on the big days, the big toe-in days or something.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a lot. But again, I feel like I'll get that one that is so different than from anybody sitting on a boat. Worth it for.
Yeah, for sure.
So I would sacrifice days like that, just trying to get those few ones that, in my opinion, were much more shocking images.
Yeah. That's amazing. On those big days that you mentioned, so I was talking to Russell Ord about this, who introduced us. Can you talk about the fear versus preparation in context to those big days? Because I think the way it came up with him was, a lot of people are like, there's this crazy guy swimming at the right and shooting these waves, and he must be nuts. And he's like, yeah, okay, there's an element of that. He goes, but I've done so many reps that it's probably not as risky as a casual observer would think, because I've been there so many times. I've done this. I know the spots to be in, etc. So is that a similar concept with a place like Teahupoo?
Absolutely. I can agree with that wholeheartedly, in the sense that, yes, we'll look at it and be like, well, this person's out of their mind. Why would they ever want to do that? Right? Because it looks. But obviously, the more you do it, like anything else, right, it becomes like muscle memory. You know where to sit and how to sit for certain reasons during certain swells. You can avoid being caught because you know what that wave's going to do. And I've done the preparation physically in order to be there. I didn't used to do a lot of training, because my training before was just being in the water nonstop.
Yep.
And so, yes, it seems like you want to question the guy's sanity for being in there, but being the person in there, and the few of us that do it, you just learn through having to do it, and your safety measures click in. So yes, you're prepared, because okay, I've looked at the forecast, I know what the waves are going to do, I know where the rogue ones, where they might or might not be coming from, at around what time with the incoming tide, that sort of information is always in the back of your head, so that you can keep that. I mean, it is Teahupoo. There's always going to be a random one that's just, here we go. And clogged and whatever. Then there's obviously never a formula that works perfectly for, I'm going to be safe, because anyone who does this will tell you you're going to get caught at some point, or something's going to go sideways, and it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be a fun moment. But you prepare yourself enough so that when that inevitable happens, you're prepared enough with.
So are you training out of the water now as well, or?
Yes, just because I've gotten a lot older and the body requires it. The maintenance needs to be there. I'm very lucky that the family that took me in, my wife's family, where we built a house, we live right on the water. So
amazing.
I do that, that pick up the rock training underwater. I've got my one particular rock that just sits out there.
Nice. Dom's rock.
The swell somehow, when people haven't picked it up and taken it away, I'd be very
amazing.
sad. It'd be like my Wilson. Someone took my Wilson.
Hilarious.
And beyond that, just a lot of swimming. I, in the last 2 years, luckily, my son started doing judo.
Yep.
And I befriended the judo sensei, who's just like, well, and I just started asking questions, and I was like, well, how do you stay fit to do judo? And he's like, well, we do something called taizo, which is physical training to be ready for any martial art. And it's Japanese mode of a lot of body weight stuff. And so
nice.
He took me under his wing, and I would do that twice a week, and he would ruin me.
Yep.
I'm very for this. The dad bod started kicking in. I was like, what's happening here?
Yeah, for sure.
He kicked my butt back into shape. And so all those things make it so that I can, and then obviously just these days diet.
Yep. Yeah.
Keep myself that way so that I can.
So on those,
I used to be just a pirate who'd be like, oh, whatever, just 2 sips of water and I'm out there all day.
I'm out there all day. Yeah. So are you having like rest during those sessions, or are you literally in the water?
These days, I have a lot more rest than I used to. I used to be known for, I'd literally swim out at dark to be out there at first light, and I wouldn't swim until dark. Amazing. And I'd be out there swimming nonstop.
Yeah.
Would have pity on me. They'd let me put a bottle of water on their boat and, throw me back or something. And I had a granola bar in my wetsuit. Yeah. That was about it.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
A lot of very, very salty, very.
Yeah.
Crispy days. Let's put it that way.
100%. Yeah.
But well worth it for me anyway.
Yeah. It's amazing. So now that you've shot it so much, I was talking to Marcus about this last week, actually. Like when you've shot somewhere so much, have you found that you're I guess when you're initially starting there and you're shooting these guys in the beginning, you're like, I just hope I nail a couple of in focus shots of the guys, and then you start to progress and then you're comfortable with that. Have you noticed that as you've gone on that maybe you start to think about more artistic risks because you've shot the spot so much? Can you be the guy that can try a different angle or a different, just capturing it in a different way, partly for your own creativity, but also, I guess to be that guy that got that shot. And based on that, how much does that weigh up against actually the pressure to get a shot? Like if you're there shooting John, for example, how risky can you afford to be, to get an epic shot versus definitely getting a shot? Does that make sense?
Well, I think that's a balance that you have to weigh professionally, period. Again, in the past, it used to be something that I'd just be like, I'm just going to risk it all.
Cool. Yep.
I'll save and risk it for the biscuit type thing.
Yeah.
No, these days it's obviously I weigh it a lot more professionally. It's that if I'm given a brief, I need to nail the shots that are in that brief for the brand, for the surfer, for whatever it might be. So I need to be calculated as to what lens I need to use and what works best for that day, so that I'm not just out there with my ego trying to waste shots, trying to get a wide angle fisheye shot, which will be incredible to me, but not necessarily what they're looking for or what is needed or whatever. And obviously creatively, after shooting it for so many years, I don't think anyone could call themselves a photographer or an artist if you don't start trying new things. Because if you just become that one trick pony, then
amazing. Yeah.
Obviously, people are going to get, that off factor is going to get lost. And yes, you might still be nailing amazing imagery, but they're just going to be like, oh, that again looks like that. And people tell me, they say, oh, that looks like the Dom angle. And I'm like, yeah, but that's almost cringy at this point. I'm happy that it's recognizable, and I'm happy that it's appreciated. But at some point, yes, you obviously start trying different things. And I started years ago trying to photograph it I'd seen a few people follow cam on a jet ski, filming it, and I was like, well, and I started talking with Jimmy Wilson when he was the editor of Surfing, and we came up with we should do a whole portfolio just based on that angle, and seeing it from that different perspective motivated me to want to get even more different images and capture that, and just making it look different. So trying different lenses from different positions, and underwater, over. The only thing that I haven't gotten stuck in on is the drone, because at this point I'm just, as long as I'm healthy enough to be swimming around, that's my priority. And even from the jet it's thrilling. It's amazing, to be following the waves. So that
For sure.
Just,
Yeah.
anything that kind of allows those three things is one, doing Chopo justice for the wave that it is, the awe that it creates, the beauty that it has. My positioning, whether it be swimming and or on that jet ski, and then making it look, making the rider great, doing what he's doing.
Yeah, amazing. So once we start seeing drone shots on your imagery, we'll know you're starting to get a bit tired.
I hope I'll be back. Or maybe one of those. If you and here I go with these stupid moves again, but you can't be join them. I'll just hand my drone to someone while I'm swimming.
Classic.
Maybe I'll cheat.
So what is your we touched on it briefly, but what does your work look like now in 2023 with social media? And I guess maybe, I don't know, I've had some discussions about it, and you can speak to it, but like, is there the same amount of funding from traditional surf brands, or is it looking to different clients to work with, or like you said, working specifically with surfers? Like, how does it kind of work now that it's not taking photos, selling them to magazines, looking for covers kind of thing?
Yeah, well, it's definitely gotten a lot broader. I'll say that. As much as at first it was like, oh, social media, bah, humbug. This is, it's kind of a weird transition where we didn't know what the imagery was going to do or how it was going to be used. And so, yes, Instagram obviously is that, that 2-second, oh, wow, this is great. Swipe to the next one. But fortunately, what that's created is that it's also created a lot more business in the sense that everybody needs their own content. And again, I'm preaching to the choir that everybody knows that, but it's also made it so that you have to differentiate yourselves from the horde, right? And so, it helps that if you've been there for a long time, but even then, it does motivate you to try and find different angles and do things a little differently. But to come back to the heart of the question, I suppose, is that, I definitely, you try and look for non-endemic clients as well. Because yes, obviously the brands are always going to come to you for their, if you're lucky enough to build these relationships, they'll come to you for the imagery that they require for their campaigns and their whatever they require that way. But you definitely want the non-endemic stuff too, because they come at it from a different angle. So the briefs that they give you will be a lot different than what you're usually used to seeing. And I'm always happy to be contacted to do that sort of thing, because again, you have to think differently.
For sure.
That's always a helpful thing in any career, is that, to challenge yourself to, okay, it doesn't need to look the same. We do this. But obviously there's not the mags, there's very few of them. So clients come from all sectors these days. I had through my website, I had a hotel that was being built in California, graphic design company, or an interior design, excuse me, hit me up for 3 photos for each one of the rooms. On that. But obviously, and that happened right before COVID, which is amazing because and
awesome.
A little nest egg to pass that.
Exactly. And did you say that like a surfer's paying now for?
Oh excuse me. So surfers will now contact you and pay you themselves, because they need the contact, because they've become the brand themselves, right? And even the companies within their contracts require them to be posting X, Y, and Z for themselves through their social media. So they become their own businesses essentially, because they have sponsors that aren't necessarily, the surf endemic. They'll have, I don't know. Whatever it is, massage guns or CBD or nutrition or
100%.
They will now contact me and be like, look, I'm coming over for a week. What do you think we can do for a package for social media stuff? And they, and I'll give them the rates of that, and then have a medium, and out we go, and we shoot and get them what they require. That's nice too. And it's been great, because then it actually allows me to work with my friends.
Definitely.
Awesome. Because before you used to have a good relationship with a brand and you work with their surfers. Now it's like I can actually work with my friends.
For sure.
Which I was lucky enough to do that before, but now it's just it's facilitated that.
100%. No, that's amazing when you think about that, like from a lifestyle point of view, for anyone kind of, just like an aspiring surf photographer. It's like a swell coming to Teahupoo in itself is exciting enough, and now you're combining that with, I'm going to get paid to shoot friends who are the best surfers in the world while the waves are amazing. Like, it's the dream when you like you put it like that.
So good.
So on that,
I see a lot happening these days. I've met some really rad young photographers that are coming over, and that even if they're not like the highest level of surfers, the level of surfing's gone up so radically that anyone can be an amazing surfer these days. So I see young photographers coming over with these guys that are just talented as heck, and they already working with their friends and already have that connection. So I think it's facilitated things a lot in that, and I think it's an amazing option. It's kind of due to that.
For sure. So on this like content world, I mean, it's amazing that there's guys coming that are getting you to shoot, but I imagine now anytime there's a swell coming, like it's so easy for everyone and anyone to know about it and get in there. And now there's guys like back in the day, I guess surfers would come in, and like you mentioned before, there'd probably be a limited few photographers that would just happen to be there shooting and selling the images. Whereas now guys are bringing filmers in and like a crew of people in and that kind of stuff. And there's like a lot of them. So how's that changed the lineup and, the experience of it? Like, as opposed to,
well, it's definitely, it's made it a little more strained. But just because, like anything else, Chopo and the channel and the shooting zone is quite small between the wave itself and where you want to sit, depending on the day. If it's if you're shooting wide angle or if you're shooting 50 or what have you, the space anywhere from the barrel to where the surfers kick out is where water photographers will sit, and that's not a very big area. So that obviously it becomes saturated with a ton of photographers. And then a lineup like anything else. So you hope that people have the respect to be like, okay, well, he lives here, he's been shooting the locals and the surfers, and he's shooting X person. So we're going to be respectful enough to allow that to happen, and I'll swim in front of them. And obviously, in a perfect world, that's amazing. It doesn't happen all the time. People and their egos and their hunger gets the better of them. So be gently reminded that that's just not the way it should be done, and you hope that they listen. Not, you used a little harsher words. But that becomes so small, and then obviously with the saturation of Chopo being known, and now with the Olympics coming, and there's so many boats and so much kerfuffle around it, that the zone that we can swim in has become restricted as well, because there's so many boats pushing each other closer and closer to the line, that we obviously, our zone becomes smaller and smaller. So it's tough to jump because you've got your mind on the wave, the rider, the boats behind you, the photographers right next to you. It becomes a lot to take in at the same time. So that's another matter that we think of now as, okay, what is all this happening? And in a safety measure way, it's not ideal, but entirely awful yet. The first swell of the season that was meant to be fairly big, that was promoted by Surfline and their 20-foot plus or whatever, was the most saturated I've seen it, with skis, surfers, boats, people, media, the whole thing. And for me, that tipped the saturation level to uncomfortable and no longer fun. And that for me is sad to see. And I think anyone who's here regularly will tell you the same thing, that it's become, like, people would always say, oh, well, the circus is in town, but this really became a circus.
Okay.
It's unfortunate. And so I'm hoping that at some point becomes, and it has, that becomes a discussion whereby, it shouldn't be that much of a blowout. But it's what it is, and you have to take it as it comes, because the more that this place gets known and the more that the wave gets put on the map, the more that's going to happen. And so hopefully we can find sustainable solutions for it. So that everyone can still have fun shooting Chopo from a boat, from the water, the tourists watching it, so that everyone can enjoy it. Rather than it being a stressful, angry thing where you have to be like, okay, why is this happening?
I mean, definitely.
I'm guilty of it. I'm putting the imagery out there for the world to see it, so that everybody wants to come and either do it or see it or whatever. So I'm
a tough one, isn't it? I've spoken to a lot of photographers about that. It's hard, isn't it? Because it's like you're the guy like that's taking the photos. It's like you can't help but feel an element of responsibility, as well as also being the guy that's there that understands so much how it needs to ideally be preserved and not go too crazy. It's like, it's a double-edged sword sometimes.
Without coming into the grumpy old man of my day, it used to be so good because there were people around, like, God forbid I ever become that guy, as much as,
all good. Hey, you've mentioned a couple of times I've seen, you've used the word like finding calm in the chaos, or you've talked about how with like a lot of the the craziness and all this stuff going on over there, how you can sometimes become super hyper aware, like with your focusing, and it can take you into this, I guess it might be like a kind of a version of like flow state, like for yourself.
For
like,
sure.
can you talk to that? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. It's just that obviously when the waves are big, or anytime I'm shooting wide angle, it becomes this thing where your focus becomes so narrowed that everything in the periphery, the noise, and again, here I was talking about the boats and the photographers, I don't see them anymore. Unless someone's particularly directly in my field of vision or in what I'm going to do, and I'm having to gently remind them not to do this thing. I fully forget that any of that is happening. I'm become so focused on my placement, the dangers that are happening, exactly what that wave is doing. You get to know it in such a way that, okay, this wave is going to do exactly that. So I need to be in this position or not in that one at all. So your mind starts just automatically going into those avenues so that everything else just becomes a non-event.
Yeah.
And then and you no longer have to think about it. And I've said this before, and whatever, it becomes like muscle memory to a certain extent, but not just physical, but mental, to the, okay, well, I no longer have to think of this or that. It's just, I'm kind of feeling my way around the wave and what it's doing to know where I need to be. And then, well, that rider's doing that, so I need to be in this precise position to get the shot that I've envisioned, that I thought of, and what have you. And so all that combined just makes you hyper focused, and you no longer have to. I don't see or hear much around me at that.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah. So what's that? Can you kind of put into words, like for people that like are never going to probably be in that experience, like what it's like at Teahupoo, like on a pretty decent day, like the sound, like the energy, like the power, like is it possible to even describe?
It's hard to describe in the sense that it's a totality of things happening at once. Obviously the wave makes it sound that's incredible. The way that it hits the reef, it's just loud enough as it is. Then you have everyone on the boats behind you cheering on the rider. The anticipation is palpable, right? Like people holding their breath. It's a huge wave, guy paddling in, people hold their breath until he gets that out. Or if if he's unlucky enough to eat shit, and suddenly you can hear the lineup gasp, including yourself. And you have, oh God, is he going to come up? And so it's an amazing cacophony of sounds and emotions, things that are constantly, going off around you. But it's quite an amazing thing to experience, because I guess it'd be kind of like being in any sort of arena where there's high performance sports happening, but with every element being a moving piece.
It's fascinating. It just must be a really interesting high to then come down off after like a massive day and all that happening.
It's hard to decompress once you get in. It's a thing that I guess it's some sort of thing like any, and I don't want to say that I'm a high level athlete or anything like that, but I imagine it'd be the same thing as a fighter gets so mentally prepared for his fight that once it's all done, to come down off that adrenaline, it's hard to do, but it gets easier and easier with time.
For sure.
I have trouble sleeping after swells.
So
hyped up and whatever. The thing that is constantly never changes, I have trouble sleeping before swells.
That's what I was going to ask.
Everything ready. Is the gear ready? Am I ready? What's the day going to bring? I have to be up at the crack of dawn. Just everything. Checklists going off, and so not much sleep before swell.
I imagine.
Melatonin's your friend.
So you've mentioned an ideal image is something that has longevity and makes you want to keep looking at it. So what are those elements for you in an image?
It's hard to tell because that changes a lot over time for me. But things that are timeless will always be timeless. So things that become iconic over time. I don't want to keep mentioning John again because a lot of people do it, but it's people standing tall in the barrel for me is something that I love. Any image that is artistic enough, or Teahupoo just being what it is, and you've captured it from a certain angle that puts that raw energy and displays it really well. Things that it speaks to the viewer in the sense that they want to keep coming back and looking at it and finding new things within that one image, or the portfolio of images that you've created that keeps people wanting to come back and see, and it creates an emotion with that they question why that's okay, well, why does that make me feel that way? Or, besides just the obvious, oh wow, that's scary.
Yeah.
Oh, that's scary, but why? And and questioning that questioning process to me is good. And if you can have the viewer or the audience have that questioning process, they're going to keep coming back to look at
for sure.
At your body of work, that specific image or what have you. And so to me, that's really important. Beyond just like capturing a moment, having it be, just awe factor.
Yeah.
I think that's where the artistic creativity comes from. And you're not always going to speak to everyone, because, art is so subjective that one photo might be loved by so many, and then others that people ignore are some of my favorites.
Yep.
But as long as it's getting that questioning process and people are appreciating it for what it is because of what's happening within them, I'm all in to keep offering that to
for sure. Do you have any like favored conditions there? Because I mean, I guess like instinctively people might be like, oh, when it's just like the biggest day, it's amazing. But is it like, if it's sitting at kind of like a nice, perfectly clean, like 6 to 8 foot, could that be nicer photographically? Like, do you have anything like
that? I've got 2 sizes for me that I would say 3, ideally, that for me are just magic. Topo, like 3 to 5 feet, sunny, beautiful inside a ledge, just clean, wide angle photography. For me, that is shooting ducks in a pond. You can be inside the barrel, you can shoot it from underwater.
When you say 3 to 5 feet, are you measuring that in the same way as like Hawaiian size? Just because this will be a lot of people will be in Australia here, just for reference. So just double checking. But that's right.
5 foot max. I guess.
Cool.
Quite solid, but 3 to 6 feet, because it just becomes an underwater and in the water studio at that point. It's beautiful. It offers everything without it being hyper scary. I mean, you are in a critical position, but it's not. And then I think for me, my favorite to shoot is when it gets to that very limit of paddleable, 10 to 13 feet. And people keep pushing that limit. Like Nathan Florence always baffles me. Like he's one of my favorite people in the world to shoot, not just because he's an amazing human and he, barrel of laughs with him at all times, but just the way that he approaches it and pushes himself to keep wanting to get bigger and better waves and to ride it better. It's just, his slab tour is just baffling to watch. But having a rider like that in the water when it's 10 to 13 feet or whatever, for me is I can live for that every day. Waves going to be, but that is going to be absolutely baffling. And then you're trying to sit in there and find the best position. It's just everything coming together for me that makes shooting Chopo incredible to me. So
what about from a weather point of view? What about from a weather point of view? Do you like kind of clear days or some moody clouds or anything like that?
For me, when it comes to weather-wise, unless I'm doing I'm shooting a particular brief where they want it sunny or they want it moody or what have you, I'll take what Chopo offers me on that day and I'll adapt to it. Because Chopo can be amazing. There's days when it's cloudy and the sun comes up and there's just sun on the wave and there's dramatic clouds in the background. That's some of my favorite because the water goes this like metallic blue, super dramatic background. So that is some of my favorite, but I'll take whatever Chopo gives me because I'm not going to pretend. It's beautiful in all its facets to me.
For sure.
Perfect, stunning. So and it makes it look so different that I'm just happy to be out there shooting it and adapting to what.
100%.
So if I had my picks, sunny on Chopo and dramatic in the background, to me it's just
perfect. Cool. So you sell on that kind of concept, you sell prints as well, like on your website. So do you have a different creative mindset or vision if you're taking a photo that's going to end up like on someone's wall as opposed to shooting surfers, or is it just that you're out there and you capture certain shots that end up as prints while you're there?
I think both are true and both happen. Some of the best photos that I have in my print gallery are just because I've been out there shooting and I'm shooting surfing all day, and it just happens to be a moment that came together again with the weather, the lighting, all these things come together. But there are days where I go out there and I have prints in mind, and I'm definitely have a different mindset to shooting that. I'll go out there with a particular image that I want to capture, and I'll spend most of the day trying to capture that one image, or multiple days trying to capture that one image.
Amazing.
Because it just come together the way that your crazy brain wants it to. Or,
Yeah. Yeah.
your creative mind wants it to, and you at some point it becomes annoying because I mean, I don't think anyone who does this isn't a perfectionist to a certain degree.
For sure.
And
yeah,
so I definitely go down that rabbit hole of I'm just, okay, well, I'm going to get stuck in until this happens.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always happen. And, there's shots that I've been trying to get for years that still haven't come together, and hopefully they will one day. But if they don't, the process has been fun.
Yeah.
In the interim, frustrations and all. So I'm just, but it's definitely a different mindset artistically. Yes, I try and be artistic when I'm shooting surfing, but there's only so far you can push that without losing a lot of capturing what's happening.
Definitely. Yeah. So there's a sports
for myself
to it. Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
So if I'm shooting for myself, I'll go out there and I will take those risks, and I'll make those. I will lose a lot of imagery. That so be it. Maybe I missed 3/4 of the sequence the best wave of the day, but the one shot that I got from that sequence is, to me, worth the whole session of the day.
For sure. Long-winded
answer.
No, it's a great answer. Yeah. So just touching back to the I'll give you some context to the question, but just touching back to the social media thing. Do you feel any pressure to, I guess, number one, be at a swell, number two, like the timing, like to put out imagery based on just yourself and maybe the fact there's so many other people shooting there? And I guess the context to this question was when I was talking to Rambo Estrada, he was saying that in New Zealand now, if there's a swell in New Zealand, then probably now because of his like profile, there's almost an expectation that he was probably there, and people will be going to his account to try and see imagery of it. And in that exact interview, I actually brought you up as like my person for Teahupoo. It's like if you hear about it, if you see a Surfline thing saying like there's a swell at Teahupoo, like yours is like the first account I'll go to like go, oh, I wonder what it looked like. You know what I mean? And so I just wonder whether for your own brand or anything like that, like is there any like pressure that you feel to get stuff out in that regard?
There's definitely pressure there. I'd be lying if I were to say there isn't, because obviously we've all become our own brands, and you want people coming back to look at. I don't think of it in the sense that, I'm the guy that people want to go see, but I'm extremely happy to hear it. Thank you. that my imagery attracts that kind of an audience. So I want to keep offering that. At the same time, I'm shit at social media.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna be dead honest about that.
Yeah.
I'm not someone who's like constantly trying to put out like all these galleries and the swipe through galleries, whatever. Like I'll put out the one image that to me that day spoke of that day.
Yep.
But there is definitely the pressure that, okay, well, I want to put this out there because the swell just happened and there needs to be eyes on it, because the ephemeral thing that social media is, it's that short window and it needs to be out there during that window, or the views and the what have you aren't going to be there.
Yep.
And that's important for a marketing standpoint for the self brand. But honestly, the thing for being there every swell to me isn't pressure that I put on myself social media wise. It's an addiction I had from day one that I've gotten a show about. It is exactly that, just a bad addiction. I haven't missed a significant swell in 15 years.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I've been in situations where I've been traveling and there's a swell coming and I'm like pulling my hair. I'll be like, please don't let it be that good. Or I'm going to have to get on, like, I'll start booking flights or looking at flights and be like, do I need to get home by this day?
Yeah.
I need to be there because this is just my own weird.
Yeah.
I don't want to miss it just because I love it so much. And because it's something that, that to me, it's a self challenge if I want to be there every significant swell.
100%. Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. Then putting it on social media is definitely an important thing.
Well, even from a like a business point of view outside of social media. So I guess there's times when, like, if something amazing happens, like maybe there was a couple of photographers before, but now there could literally just be like someone in a boat that's a tourist that's bought a brand new camera that happens to nail a shot at the same time, and it's like, do you know what I mean? So do you have a situation where you've got enough relationships that if you can get in and send your shots that they're more likely to be the ones to get published, or is it a bit of a race against everyone? Like,
it's a bit of a race against everyone. I've gotten comfortable enough in my shooting and my relationships whereby I'll send it to the select people that I value.
Yeah.
But ideally, I'll give it to the surfers that I really care about, because I have,
Yeah.
there's people that I'm really, that push me, and vice versa, who obviously I'll send it to them first and do all that kind of stuff. But for my personal stuff and what I'm posting or whatever, it's just something that I rather post it on my own channel rather than get the $50 and help said company, said website do better than me.
Yeah. Yep.
For the price standpoint, whatever. And yes, they get it out there and they have a lot more followers than I do. Because again, shit at Instagram, which I really need to get on top of. And I just need to do a crash course with some sort of youthful human who can.
It's all right. Sounds like you're doing all right. I'm getting plenty of work out of it anyway. So
no.
Yeah.
From that standpoint, but
yeah,
I rather put certain things on my channel than have it be diluted in the gallery for someone else.
Yeah, cool. What about personally? I ask this question a lot. Like, if there's been like a really good day and you've been shooting a lot, like, what's your own process? Are you like, frothing to get in and get the card in the computer and like see the images straight away, or do you like to kind of let them marinate a little bit and kind of look at them with a different energy? Like, how does that process work for you?
Again, I think it depends on the day, but on an epic day where obviously all you can think of is getting in, and you can't get that memory card in the reader fast enough, right? I still froth that way, and the day that I lose that froth, I think is a day that maybe I should start debating whether I should continue doing this.
I love it. Yep.
But I definitely want to stick it in there. But I do force myself to take a little step back, because I'll put the card in the reader, and usually we get in at dark, and so I'll force myself to put the card in the reader, and then I'll either crack open a beer, start making dinner, or do a little prep, and force myself to reflect on the day while I'm doing these things with a bit of a distance from it, so that I can say, okay, well, this was cool, that image. And then when I sit down on the computer, I have an idea of what I want to look for first. And then I'll go straight to those moments of the day.
Yeah.
Pick those, edit those, get those out there for myself or for anybody else, for the surfers, I'll do that.
Yeah.
And I'll start narrowing it down from there. And okay, what are the most important moments? Who do I have to get these out to quickest? And then break it down from there. There's people that are much better at their workflow. They'll just go through the whole day super quickly and then break it down. I think more of, it's going to sound weird, more of an emotive person, in the sense that I care more about what that.
I get that. Yeah.
That moment was important to me. So I want that out there.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Do you ever get any kind of like rainy day, so to speak, opportunities to go back through like old sessions that maybe?
I do, for sure. And COVID was a blessing in disguise for that, right? Because obviously Tahiti had a pretty severe lockdown. But for me, it was okay. You know what? One, I get to spend more time with my family. I had my son was 4 years old, 3 to 4 years old at the time.
Yeah.
So it gave me a lot of time to sit down and go through all my archives and do the proper thing. Because at the beginning, I was, again, so rushed to get the images out there with my froth at the beginning that I wouldn't label them properly. I didn't, my work wasn't on point.
Yeah.
So it gave me time to go through my whole archives and label them and put my most favorite and valued images on certain hard drives. I've been compiling images for a book for the last 3 years.
Nice.
Ever since. It's been a upcoming process, but that's hopefully will be out within the next year.
Awesome.
Hopefully
Amazing.
It's my own art project. It is what it is.
Unreal. Love it. Yeah.
So it's going to be more of a photo and journal. The experience of me here for 15 years.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah.
That was a shameless plug, but
no, let me know as soon as it's out. I'm obsessed with surf photography books. That's what my whole office is full of all of them. So yeah, that's unreal.
If you ever see something labeled covered in salt,
believe
me.
Amazing. And what about beyond Tahiti? Like, do you travel much? I guess now that the world's back, in some kind of order. Like, do you?
For sure.
Travel? Yeah.
Again, to go back to and I hate to keep referencing COVID, but it was one of these things. It was a direct line in the sand for me. I used to travel a lot. I used to have this weird thing that for me is, not like Nathan's slab tour, but I would love to go to Slabby West. And I would do my stint in Hawaii because I needed to be in Hawaii to make those contacts, to be seen, and and all the things that you need to do for the biz. And for my portfolio, it's always one of those things. Okay, I can be good at chopo, but it's a blessing that I'm known as the chopo guy to a certain degree. But I also didn't want to be that one trick pony that, okay, I can do it at pipe, I can do it at backdoor, I can do it at the box. I've done it in I've done it in Porto. I've swam big Porto. I've swam big squallies. I didn't want to be a one trick pony in that scenario. So I travel a lot. West Oz was a thing that I would do. I did for about 4 years nonstop.
Okay, nice. Had
a relationship with Jack at the time, and then John would go, and luckily I would get to work with him as well. And that was always a pleasure watching him draw those lines and do all those things. And also, I think for me it was really important to get out of my I don't want to call it a rut, but the comfort of chopo, and get the creative juices flowing, shooting different stuff in other places, and force myself to shoot land. To start seeing things from a really good perspective from land. And I, for years I was like, oh, I've gotten some covers in this rat. I never thought I'd get a cover from land. And lo and behold, I got one for surfing from land of Yaden Nickel. It was, for me, is one of the ones that I'm most proud of because it's outside of my box per se. But not that I want to say that I have a box. I'm putting myself in my own damn box. But not at all. Again, I want to be known for someone that isn't just, okay, he doesn't just shoot water. He is prolific at this and that, whatever you need shot, right? Like I can I can shoot, so the traveling was amazing. But once COVID hit, I got really comfortable at home. And my son being the age that he is, I wanted to spend as much time as humanly possible with him. So I haven't even gone back to Hawaii since COVID, which is sad because I miss all my friends and I miss the adrenaline of the place and the chaoticness of it. So I'm going to go back this year and slowly start traveling again, because I used to do all the Who Is JOB stuff as well. So we travel 2 weeks through Australia and then 2 weeks to New Zealand in a cameraman, my heels not lit on fire.
Amazing.
So a lot of fun, and hopefully we have a reunion tour at some point.
Definitely.
I'm definitely going to start doing that again, and inevitably just to start. I want to start doing a lot more travel photography for myself. I have some other ideas that have nothing to do with surfing that I want to accomplish. On another different type of book of street vendors all over the world. Anyone who sells anything on the street, absolutely anything.
So
just things like that, just to start, get my brain just not full surf addiction at all.
Do you do any client work like out of the water, or is it more just like personal project stuff?
I do. I used to. I still do weddings.
Okay.
A lot of times because when I was working for Richard, I did a lot of celebrity weddings. Well, not a lot, quite a few. And did that sort of thing, and not just all that kind of photography. So I do that. I do some fashion gigs here and there.
Cool.
Just because it's nice to just use a different part of your creative brain. Definitely. With this, camera and seeing things differently. So it's always fun to do that. And unfortunately, sorry, it's just that with the randomness of the swells, when swells are coming, I can't book gigs unless it's outside swell season to feel comfortable about it.
Definitely. Well, that's an interesting point. So how often is there like Chopu, for example, because there's so much imagery of it, like, the average person looking at social media would think that there was a perfect wave there every day. Like how often is it kind of on, for those like good days?
I dare not say.
Fair enough. Cool. That's cool. Yep. But is it seasonal? Like, is there a long stretch of time when maybe it's not, or is it just intermittent storms and that kind of thing?
It's pretty good quite often.
Okay.
I'll say that. It's not always, the idyllic perfect chopo, but that's not something that I need on a regular basis. But the best swells and the really good swells are not that often, that's for sure. And so those are the ones that I really don't want to miss and want to be here for. So I stayed there. But you can be working at chopo a good part of the year.
So beyond that, and obviously,
however,
beyond Chopu, and obviously like 100%, like not like spot naming or anything, but like you're in an island kind of environment. Is it any part of your desire? Like, do you search for new spots? Like, are you ever looking to find new waves that?
Well, it'd be pretty hard to do on this island because it's
been done.
Yeah, definitely. And exploration being what it is these days, it's hard to find little hidden gems.
Yeah,
that are there to be found.
Yeah.
Come across a few, because I mean, any pass or nook and cranny in a reef has its day. So you just need to know where to look for it on what conditions.
Yep.
So there's some amazing gems.
Yeah.
Work, once in a blue moon.
Yeah.
And even, so, and just being there at that moment is, it's definitely something that I do and that I try and find time permitting.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess it's fascinating too, because I've spoken about it before. Sometimes it may be when the spot, like the conditions that make Teahupoo amazing and those epic days, means that potentially somewhere else is working. But like, at what point do you like not go to the known thing to go and see if something else is working?
Balancing sacrifices, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh God, do I really want to miss that, or do I not want to miss that?
Yeah.
So you weigh the pros and cons of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, some sacrifices are definitely well worth it.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
And with so much imagery that I already have with Teahupoo, it's becoming easier and easier for me to step away and be like, okay, well, am I really going to get something better or more productive? No, I'll go somewhere else, or I'll try something different.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, unreal, man. This has been amazing. I think that's a good spot to wind it up. But thank you so much for all of the insights. I really once again appreciate your time. I know there's a lot going on over there for you at the moment, with between stuff with the Olympics and just swells in general. So thank you so much
for
making
doing
the time.
this with all of us, because it's epic for people to hear these stories from Marcus and Russell and all these.
Definitely.
So.
Yeah. I'm stoked you got us together. So thanks heaps for your time, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, brother.
Cool. Cheers, brother.